How's everyone doing?
Beautiful.
It's wonderful to be here with you. Listen, I've got to say, this book, it's a masterpiece. Incredibly beautiful. And just like these amazing end pages and that twig that is inviting us right into the picture book, I want to know a little bit about both of you. Here's something that kind of blew my mind. This was kind of a surprise to me. This is a book that is 10 years in the making. Is that right? Which means to me that you both have been friends for quite some time. So how exactly did you meet? And how did you end up working together on such a cool project?
John and I met in 2011, before I was published. We were at a place called Worldcon, which is where they do the Hugos every year, and I was there to try to network, which meant standing awkwardly against walls, being like, I should talk to people. And I was at a party for the George R. R. Martin fan club. The Brotherhood.
That sounds like fun.
It was fun. They're the Brotherhood Without Banners, and you can be knighted there. I was knighted there. Thank you. There's some nerds in the audience. Thank you for joining me. So I was there, and John came in, and John was this superstar at this con. He had done all these incredible covers, but that year he had done the A Song of Ice and Fire catalog. And I kind of nervously went up to him and just said, hey, I'm a really big fan. I just want to say how much I loved your work on the calendar, particularly this incredible illustration he did of Bran perched on the battlements. And I said, it really just stabbed me in the heart, and I thought it was beautiful. And I expected him to be like, thank you so much, bye. Because he was literally surrounded by people. And instead, John turned to me and was like, who are you? What are you doing here? What's your deal? And I was like, and I had just gotten the comps for my first novel, and he sat down with me in that party where everyone wanted to talk to him, and he treated me like a peer before I was one. And that was like a model for me of how to be a good literary citizen in the world, and also taught me what kind of person he was, and we've kind of been friends ever since.
Yeah,
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, when she walks up, I mean, she has this stuff, but she just had this ferocious heart and this drive, and you could just feel this electricity coming off this person. I'm surrounded by these Saturday night homies who were all kind of rolling around, grabbing our drinks, and they floated off, and she kind of stuck around, and we stuck together, and we walked through this party and the convention for the rest of the weekend. But, let's face it, the comps she's showing me for that first book, it's Shadow and Bone, people. We're talking about Shadow and Bone, all right? So, I mean, obviously, I don't know what that is. Nobody knows who she is. I don't know what that is, but I could just feel this electricity coming off of her and this professionalism, quite frankly. I mean, she's a stone cold rookie, but she felt like a pro from the beginning. And we had fun. She made me laugh, let's just be honest. And we just connected as people. So we are talking about Shadow and Bone. So she's already on a rocket ship with that beautiful book. And so we fast forward about 5 years or so. Well, no, across those next 5 years, I would say, we meet up at conventions on the road, and she's becoming this mega star, right? And I'm doing great, but she's the one that has to make time for me. And she's carving her schedule to make sure we always get our moment together. And, there are people in the business who can suck the energy out of you. She's the opposite. She puts the energy into you. She's again, electric. So, I always felt like I wanted
so nice.
to come away wanting to work, which those people are rare. Which I guess, fast forwards to 2016. Do we want to get into this now?
Yeah, might as well start talking about this amazing book. Can I ask you some questions about it?
Yeah.
All right. So here's something that I really enjoyed about this book, and there's many things, and we'll get into some of those things. But one thing that I really loved about this book is how it deals with grief. And there's this line throughout the beginning of the book that you wrote that I really loved, because there's this point in grief where you're kind of in a state of disbelief. You don't really want to accept this thing that has happened to you. And so there's this line that I feel really captured it beautifully. It's, fast with eyes on the ground. And I just wanted to ask, like, how did you kind of begin to contemplate Kala's, I guess, journey through these different stages of grief?
I mean, I think it's important to note that I think it's very easy to fall into the trap of thinking illustrator, writer, right? John is the artist, I'm the author, but that's not how this book worked. John and I worked on every word of that script together. And when he came to me with this idea, he pitched it to me as Wizard of Oz set in a graveyard, okay? and I will admit, at first when he was like, I want to write a book together, I was like, oh, great. Just because people pitch you books all of the time, like, and they're usually like, so I have an idea, I don't want to write it, you do the writing, and then we'll split it like 70-30. So I was sort of filled with dread until he said those words, and then he already had this vision for this move from black and white to Technicolor, which is what happens in The Wizard of Oz. Well, in this story, Kala's grief is embodied both by this language of denial of the world, fast, eyes on the ground, but also by the lack of color around her. She can't connect to the world. She doesn't, delicious food doesn't look delicious to her. The celebrations of her family she's disconnected from. And in order for her to reconnect with the world of the living, she first has to look death in the eye. And so that was sort of our guiding principle through this story.
Wonderful.
The idea too, again, like she's talking about how we worked through the script together, all the visual, there's some visual riffs in this book that you guys will automatically think, oh, that must be Picasso. Let's talk about the thundercloud hat on War. That was a Bardugo, that was from the Bardugo wish list very early in the process. Death's grand cloak of crow feathers. That was on the Bardugo wish list early on, and that wish list was just like hit. I knew that all these things just were so. I just wanted to get busy drawing them and making them. Also, I will say, part of the process when we were doing this is I would sketch things, but I also build things. I would build these little sculptures and maquettes, and we would talk about those things. She lives in Los Angeles, I'm in San Antonio, so it's all long distance. But I was involved in the script all the way through, but she was involved in looking at the visuals and playing in the sandbox with me, and we would go back and forth about, well, what if we tried this? And we exchanged very, very closely on all of this stuff.
Yeah. So I was also, there's just this is the kind of book, you're gonna read it and you're gonna love that first read, but it's the kind of book that you have to read multiple times, and it's because your illustrations are so jam-packed with like symbolic imagery. And for instance, and I just wrote a couple of them that I just, repetitive symbolic imagery that I just love so much. Like right off the bat, you see like Edward Muybridge patterning of crows in flight. You actually see them shot by shot, and then you repeat that pattern on the couch, and you see it reflected throughout the entire book, but that's just one of the little details. When you're constructing a book like this, how exactly are you collecting the kind of imagery that you're going to be drawing throughout the book? Is it through a list? You said that there was that wish list, but there must have been notebooks filled with, I need to draw this, I need to draw that. How did you go about compiling that list of images that you wanted to draw?
We came up with our beats, together. I did pitch a certain set of beats to her when I pitched her the idea, but then she came back with her own, and she rearranged, and so I will say that I think a lot of it comes from my culture, my memories of my family, but then she has a whole set of memories that she came with the memories of her grandfather and that relationship, and so when we're doing this stuff, it's not like we're having to. There will be discussion, I'm sure, at some point about the fights and about the conflicts that we had between us.
I'm sure I don't know what you mean. I'm a delight.
But a lot of it was about us sort of, looking at our pasts and looking at the lessons that we wanted each of the horsemen to impart. Yeah. And those became sort of the things that helped us to organize. I will also say that, we looked at the words and the pictures, of course, as things that would complement and work together. But going back to the color, I think it was important to both of us that while we did have that sort of motif of moving from sepia, the monochrome, into the color, it's the why of that that's so important. It's the fact that if you were to strip away the text, if you strip away the silhouettes and the design and the shapes, if you just look at it in terms of color palettes, the color palette alone from the design that we came up with will describe her emotional journey. And so we wanted all aspects of the book to be able to tell the same story.
But you mentioned the crows, and I'm really glad you picked up on that. I realize I have one answer. People ask me a question, I'm like, crows. But the reason that those are built that way and that you may have picked up on is there's a moment in the book, and I know it's a spoiler, but it's a picture book, it's very brief, but where Death says, I've been with you all along.
Yes.
And those are the crows. Like, that's the motif that's running through. For me, I was in Mexico when John sent me the first illustration of War. So she meets four horsemen, and one of these is War. And I had no idea he was going this kind of Zapatista direction. And I remember looking at this and being so bowled over by it and just kind of having to sit down and say, we're in different territory than I ever imagined we could get to. And it was a really cool feeling.
So that is a beautiful drawing, a beautiful illustration. But was that the first one that you completed? Was that the very first one that you saw? I mean, the first complete one?
Okay. The
First
Death
is
comes first.
Death
Okay.
came
Yeah.
first. I think
think
it was
War was next.
It was War next,
Yeah.
and then it was Plague, and Famine
Was the toughest.
Was tough. That one really bedeviled us. I mean, we went through version after version on Famine, and I'm proud of what we came up with in the end. It feels very much like it's part of that commentary, that satirical commentary on Mexican culture, Mexican history.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because the four horsemen are you're kind of just going on this journey with Kala, and you end up meeting these four horsemen. And what I loved about meeting these four horsemen is that they reminded me a bit about Mexican art history. So for instance, that illustration of War, I felt like I was looking at a mural by Sequeiros.
Oh, wow.
You know, and it was powerful in that respect. Other spreads, I felt, man, John, one of these days, some homie's gonna come up to you and he's gonna be like, can I airbrush this onto the hood of my freaking lowrider? Because it's pretty rad.
We've already got tattoo requests on the tour, and I
Yeah.
basically give my blessing on all of it. Look, you want to do it, do it. I mean, we own these things, but, we own our versions of them, let's put it that way. But, man, I'm always going to give my blessing to people, because that's an expression of love,
Yeah,
right?
so-
When they want to put those things on their bodies, on their cars, go for
So,
it. Just do it well.
So what kind of these were you looking at the three, like Sequeiros? Were you looking at Posada? Were you looking at?
Posada, totally. So
Yeah.
Jose Guadalupe Posada, late 1800s, early 1900s, political cartoonist from Mexico, who was great at making fun of rich people in his cartoons. And I love people who are able to look at what's around them and question it and have fun with it, but also teach and educate and uplift people. And Posada was the one who basically creates the Catrina caricatures that are sort of the skeletons with the fancy dresses that now is such a cornerstone icon of Day of the Dead or Dia de Muertos imagery. And we see so much of it. And I think something that was so important to Lee and I was, it's great to look backwards, but what's going forward? Where do we go forward with Mexican culture? And so, there is a lot of looking back and paying homage. But I think some of the things we did not just with the Horsemen, but certainly in this very big piece of illustration that's in the book, I hope there are some images in there that help not just people who are Mexican or Mexican American, but all of us see where the culture could be going forward.
Oh yeah, you had a.
Are we going to show this thing? For
I
real?
mean, I'm going to try to
Go
open.
ahead. We need a
Where is it
table.
exactly?
I got you.
Here it is.
need-
It's. I mean, look at this. So those of you who have purchased this book, you are in for a treat. I kind of want to.
So the original-
I actually want to take this book apart and hang this on my wall. It's pretty awesome.
So the original. By the way, the entire book is graphite, so it's all pencil drawing. with digital color on, that I applied digital color on top. The original of this is 5 feet long and all graphite. So for those of you out there who draw all day long, you know that drawing in graphite and trying to shade and render, it's laborious, but
You know his palm was dirty.
put that cover sheet under. Anyway, labor of love. And
Yeah, so it was just fantastic to kind of see the history of Mexican and Mexican-American cultura represented through these four horsemen, and then of course the future of Mexican culture. I saw luchadores in there.
But there's also new icons too that we were trying to put across. The idea.
Tell me some of those.
Well, the idea of I'm from San Antonio, so there were these women, these fantastic women called the Chili Queens, and they're around in the early 20th century. So we're talking about 1900 to 1920, 25, and these wonderful women who would cook up these huge pots of chili for people who are underprivileged or just couldn't afford food, period. And they would set up out in downtown, and they were just sort of these saints, who would take care of people. And they had a certain look, but I sort of took that look and expanded upon it. I think we want to go back a little bit here and talk about, when we're talking about process, there were some very significant meetings that she and I had when I was first pitching this. This is back to 2016. I went to Los Angeles and we spent time in graveyards together. We spent time
That
at
sounds like a wonderful place to spend time.
For people like us, it is.
It is. Los Angeles County Museum of Art had a wonderful Guillermo del Toro exhibit that we spent some very important couple of hours in. And we talked about a lot of different old, obscure Victorian paintings, not so much just the movie stuff, but there was one particular set of memorabilia from this one movie, Crimson Peak. You guys know Crimson Peak?
Yes, that's a wonderful.
And I was just at that point starting to really understand just how powerful Alexander McQueen's work was. So I was about 6 years late, because I think McQueen had passed, about 6 years previous. And so I was just now starting to discover, and she was far more versed in fashion, as you can see, than I was. And so when we're looking at those dresses, and she was just describing how the cuts work and how these things were put together, it was really seeding my mind. And so when we look at that spread, that's me. And in fact, even all the horsemen, it's me sort of trying in my own way to take some of that Alexander McQueen influence, where he's folding his takes on Scottish culture, on the social dynamics of his moment and some of his own personal traumas, and merging all that stuff into every stitch of his work. Well, that's what I'm trying to do. And I think we try to do when we're creating our characters, is we're putting ourselves, but also our takes on social dynamics, on history, and baking that into these icons. And so hopefully we have some that
are
are
in
new.
Every single page of this book, it's really fantastic. There's this moment, there's these little touches in the book that I also just really love. For instance, the entire beginning in those sepia tones. But it isn't just sepia tones, because you have a connection to Kala's grief directly pointed to us with the addition of that red scarf that you then see reflected in the picture frames. And the person who is wearing the red scarf is her grandfather. Yeah, that was a great touch to those early illustrations. It really gets you to understand why we are going on this journey with her.
For me, that was my way into the book, was the specificity of her grief.
Yeah.
My grandfather raised me. He's the person who taught me to love stories. He was a working class kid from Boston, but he loved novels and poetry and cowboy songs and opera, anything melodrama he loved.
Okay.
And so but he never got to see me become a writer. He never got to see me publish. And to me, that unfinished story in the book, the story that Kala and her grandfather are reading together, that's the metaphor for all of grief. She doesn't want to finish the story because that means letting go of the grief and maybe letting go of him. And for me, that was my path through the book. I had wanted to write a book about grief for a long time, but everything I came up with was honestly incredibly boring and a little pretentious too. It was very I'm having deep thoughts and I'm writing poetic language. And when John pitched me this book, I thought, of course, this has to be an adventure. And we need a heroine who has a brave heart and who needs to reconnect with her family, with her culture, but also to go places she's afraid to go in order to come out on the other side of grief.
Oh, that's wonderful.
You know, I think when I pitched the idea to her, it was very much a story about a girl trying to overcome the fear of death. But again, when I tell you about how I brought certain melody and beats into it, and then she rearranged, one of the most important rearrangements she did was we shifted that story from overcoming the fear of death to how this young girl processes grief. And I think that's a much more profoundly Mexican concept than where we first started from, and that came from her. So again, it's that cross-pollination and those uncanny and unexpected and surprising ones that you'd expect it to be from me but know it's from her, or you would expect it to be from her but know it's from me. And that's some of the best stuff where we do blend, but we surprise each other. And that was what I think kept this thing alive for both of us, was surprising each other.
So I love the design of Cala, the name, Calavera.
Calavera.
And she's dressed in, and my son, I used to love it when my son was like 4 years old and he had on his little skeleton costume. He always wanted to wear it. But I also wondered, because, throughout the book, she's just so quiet and withdrawn and not really communicating with anyone. And I was just wondering if she was even alive.
She is.
Yeah.
She's in this room, actually, somewhere. I see you. I can feel you.
Nice.
My daughter's here somewhere. So yeah, she's very much sort of carries a lot of the body language and the spirit of my kid. There was 3 different girls I used as reference.
Okay.
And when I'm doing this stuff, I'm shooting reference photographs of family and friends to kind of help me to springboard this stuff on top of building all these maquettes and such. But yeah, my kid and sort of the way she carries herself was part of my entry into that character.
I see.
And so yeah, that's.
But I think too, Cala doesn't really begin to speak. She doesn't speak to us.
Yeah.
She speaks to herself. She speaks in narration until she meets the horsemen, right?
Yeah.
And so each of those horsemen embody fears that come up around death. But for Cala, that's when she begins to come back to herself,
Yes.
is in those encounters. And it's only then that she can actually start to express her personality. But we've had a lot of people be like, this book is scary, it's spooky. Yeah. But for me as a kid, and what I've seen in kids is they will wear a skeleton onesie. They love Halloween, and it's not just the candy. It's about meeting the monster and besting it, or maybe becoming the monster and getting to be scary for a little while.
And it also seems like I don't want to have a spoiler, but it also feels like the very last page.
Or the penultimate one.
Yeah, it feels like it's going to be the start of a great adventure.
Yeah.
And I love that ending,
But also that penultimate spread, and I'm not going to give it away, that has a lot to do with how she resolves her grief. And yeah, it has to do with letting go.
Yeah.
Letting go but not forgetting. And that's very Mexican.
That is very Mexican. So that's something too that I felt was also so very important about this book, is that these Day of the Dead takes place a day right after Halloween, November 1st, November 2nd. And this book makes it crystal clear that Dia de los Muertos is not Halloween.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
I really love seeing that about this book. And it's also so very educational in capturing all of the different traditional elements, that make Dia de los Muertos so special and so unique. And you kind of take us on a step-by-step journey through the different ways that these 2 days are celebrated.
How we commemorate.
Yeah. So, can you name some of those ways, like from the Pan de los?
Well, and the ofrendas. The ofrenda is such an important thing. Gathering. The process of gathering the elements for the ofrenda. Whether you go to the market or go to the bakery, and we're finding those favorite totems of our beloved, departed ones, and how we arrange those. It's a long picture book, but those moments where we had to, those spreads where we had to describe those things, there's so much we had to pack in. Part of what I learned, and I think actually we both kind of learned this in this thing, was how to visually prioritize. You can say that it is jam-packed and it is a big layer cake that we've built together, but I think, I hope, and I think y'all will let us know, I think a lot of it is about how you build a visual hierarchy of where you want people's eyes to go and how you want them to, go through that visual journey in the book.
So you were saying that you took pictures of people you knew to include in
For reference.
For
Those
reference.
are reference.
Were any people that you knew referenced in the book? A grandfather maybe, or?
I mean, obviously her relationship to her grandfather and story is built very deeply into it. But no, for me, it was really about these kind of touchstones of, I've found grief very isolating. There's an experience we have when we lose someone where the world gets real noisy for a while. There's a ton of logistics to take care of. We're surrounded by people, and then things go quiet. And in this case, Kala is surrounded by people making a lot of noise and making offers to her, right? There are offerings to her constantly, and she rejects them. So to me, that was sort of the way to build her adventure. And until she goes to those cemetery gates, it can't begin, right? There's grief, and then there's what's on the other side of grief. So, yeah.
I will say too, like when you're using reference photos, for those of you who are visual creators out there, I'm not real big on wanting to copy what I see out here. Like if you look at the girl in the book, it's not going to look just like my kid. I'm not interested in that. I think what I'm interested in is shooting reference photos so that I can figure out how I want to draw how a character feels. So, it's something I've been telling as we've been on this tour, and I've had kids walk up to me and ask me about drawing. I always try to tell them it's really not about trying to draw what things look like out here in what we call this real world. It's trying to draw how things feel, and that's a far more, potent way of visually communicating, and I think it's far more elusive, and I think it's far better, and it's far cooler. And so, for me, I was always trying to Frankenstein these reference photos into what she and I were trying to create. So there's nothing in there where I would say, oh, it looks just like this family member, although there's a couple of little small ones where I did have a nod to my mother, father, and my paternal grandparents, but they're so small that even our own family will likely miss them. But it's always about trying to create something new, and I do want to say that. This isn't just about trying to take what's out here in the real world and just put it into a fantastical realm. You have to all make it speak from the same vocabulary of the heart.
So we're going to be taking some questions from the audience pretty soon, but I'm going to ask one last thing. So last year, my Dia de los Muertos book was published.
Yep.
And one of my favorite things to draw was the ofrendas. And I thought to myself, well, what would I want somebody to bring to me when I am on the other side? And I thought, well, definitely a stack of comics, some blank sheets of paper, mis plumas, mis lápices, mi borrador, for sure. What would you like somebody to bring you?
That's easy.
Oh, what do you got?
Yeah.
Oh, it's my Blackwing pencils.
Your Blackwing? Those are fancy.
This is the difference between me and John. John is like, even in death, I will work. I will continue to work. And I'm like, I'd like to take a nap. I'm going to take a long nap.
Ernest Hemingway used those pencils. That's crazy. All right.
I love those pencils.
For me, the food would probably, I could be brought back by like musubi. Like that's
what is that?
It's spam on rice.
Oh.
It's
So like
delicious.
A Hawaiian dish.
I think it's the most delicious food. That's like my comfort food.
Is it just original spam, or is it?
No, it's original spam. It's
Okay.
It's a slice. I'm a very classy lady, and it is a slice of spam and sometimes a little bit of sauce, and it's just put on rice with a little bit of nori around it, and it's like my ultimate. Like when I'm sick or sad, that's like my favorite.
Yum,
thing.
I love that.
So put that on the ofrenda for me, please.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
we'll do.
That's cool.
So, listen, I know, I can't see any of you.
I know.
I think
Lights
there are
bright.
mics if people want. If
But
people have
we have mics on the left-hand side and we have mics on the right-hand side. So
Who's got
if
questions?
any of you have any questions for either of these amazing creators, please come on up and ask them.
I think you
ask
people are
away.
intimidated by the size of this room. Don't be intimidated. Just come on up. Yeah.
We can barely see anything, just so you know. It's just bright,
this one's mine,
glaring.
right?
I don't know. No, mine is here. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Thank you.
who calls them.
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry, I'm a little short. Obviously, Dia de Muertos is very, personal for you guys. Have there been any conversations? Has any seed been put into your mind of potentially exploring the way that other cultures process grief, like turning this into a little bit of a series? Because obviously there are so many rich explorations of grief in other cultures, and I don't know, in my professional life I deal with grief a lot.
Sure.
And I'm always thinking about is there a right or a wrong way to grieve, because I see the way that it affects different people. And so I was curious if that was something that you would consider exploring in future books, or if you're like, nah, this was too heavy, we're done.
I don't think it was too heavy for us. I mean, we're both very, 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 very goth at heart. So I don't think this was too heavy at all. And quite frankly, I think we both feel very comfortable in this place, in this very uncomfortable place. I don't think a seed had been planted before, but perhaps it just did.
I would love to see it.
We've never formally discussed. This was always considered a one-off story in my mind, and I think for hers as well. But I would never close the door on working with her again. I'd put it that way. And so, as far as dealing with other cultures in grief, wouldn't be opposed to it. But I mean, we both came to this from such a very personal place. Me certainly, trying to share my culture with everybody else who isn't part of my culture. And that's really a lot of what this was about. Is I'm not just trying to, sell this story to me and Raul over here and people who are of our culture. We wanted for everybody, and that was designed that way. So it's an interesting thought.
Right. In particular, Sitting Shiva was something that, because I know you have some of that Jewish heritage.
If you watch the Lessons of the Horsemen, they're deeply embedded in Jewish values.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah. But again, for us, this was not about, we're going to draw these lines around things. It was about throwing open those gates.
Beautiful.
You want to walk with us? Walk with us. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So we'll take one from the right-hand side now.
Hi, yeah, Lee, you were a huge inspiration for me growing up, and so I was curious, do you have any advice for aspiring writers, and for John, aspiring artists?
Sure. Go first.
Oh boy. Yeah, look, we're living in a very weird time for art, I think. And the thing I would say is that, one, know why you're getting into something, why you want to be an artist or a writer, because if you're in it for fame and fortune, this is a terrible idea. There are much easier ways to attain fortune and glory. I think knowing why you love a thing, why you're passionate about that thing, and remembering that if you don't enjoy the work of it, if it's only the product, then that's going to be hard. We live, and I've been talking about this a lot lately, we live in a culture that has decided that all discomfort is bad discomfort, right? But discomfort is essential to creating. And in the age of AI, here comes this thing that says, guess what? You don't have to feel that discomfort anymore. And we talk a lot about AI in terms of the theft of copyright or intellectual property. But what it's really stealing from all of us here who are creative, it's stealing the process of creation. It's stealing that discomfort, those moments of breakthrough, those moments of flow that are so extraordinary and transformative. So what I would say is embrace that. Don't turn towards the easy stuff. Remember that when you feel that discomfort or that feeling of almost panic that can accompany creation, what comes next? That's just a sign that you're doing something bigger and better and more difficult than you've ever tried to do before.
Trust your voice. It's difficult sometimes, but trust your voice. Especially if you're having to work with other people, whether it be in the non-professional or especially in the professional realms, you're part of this team because you're there to take the team where they couldn't go by themselves. So the things that you uniquely bring to it, that again, using that word uncomfortable, they make you feel uncomfortable because maybe everybody else isn't seeing it the same way you are. That's the stuff that makes you special. And so you need to embrace that, whatever you want to call it, weirdness or uniqueness or the stuff that's quintessentially you. Especially if it's the stuff that you bring to it that is you're very passionate about. That's your magic. That's your special sauce. And everybody who is a creator has some of that, right? And so nurture that and trust it, especially when the times get tough.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi there. You two guys mentioned working in a graveyard together. Can I ask who pitched that idea? And also, if there were any ideas that spawned there that you carried into the book?
I mean, I was fresh off of a tour in the UK where I had gotten food poisoning and I was not feeling great, but John was flying to LA. We were deliberately meeting on Dia de Muertos so we could walk through all of these city cemeteries and see the ofrendas and just be part of it. We went down to Pueblo de Los Angeles. Like, we just spent time in places where people were celebrating or observing. We tried to be respectful about that. But like John said, we are Goths, and so the cemetery, and this has been true for me since I was a kid, you know, like I was a shy, weird, prickly kid, and I felt more at home in the cities of the dead than among a lot of the living, and frankly, I felt safer with them. So for me, that's just built into everything that we chose to do on the book.
Did you all visit any, like, did you specifically go to visit some burial sites, like some gravestones, like maybe?
No, we really just went to be there together. Okay. We walked, and we were looking at the spaces too, because we were thinking about the architecture of these particular graveyards and what the beats of Kala's journey were going to be as we walked through this. So for us, it was more about, and we were really at the beginning. Yeah. And this is actually an important thing to say, and this is good advice for, do we have writers, artists in here?
Raise your hand.
Raise your hand.
Raise your hands up high. That's awesome.
This is important. We talked about this book for so long before we ever talked about it with anybody else.
Super important.
And like keeping something to yourself, keeping something secret for a while so that it can have a chance to grow into something special, so that it belongs for you, just to you for a while before it belongs to other people in the world, before they can judge it, before they can put their stamp of approval or disapproval on it. That has become harder and harder. And I think part of, we worked on this for 10 years, but so much of that was us just like sort of cooking together before we even told anybody about what we wanted to do.
Keep the steam in the pot.
Yeah.
For as long as you can until you feel like you're ready to share it with everybody else, you know?
Unless it's broccoli.
Unless it's broccoli, in which case
oversteamed
throw
broccoli.
out the pot.
Yeah.
Sorry, vegetables are great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Why do you guys like to write books so much?
I mean, do you like to read books?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why we like to write them, because we love stories. We love to see the beginning and the middle and the end. And we're readers too, and that's why it's special to us.
Yep.
Do your friends have questions that they might want to ask?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, my brother does. Let's go.
Go ahead, brother.
You got it. The suspense.
I don't like to sell books.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yes.
Hi. Lee, you've talked about writing worlds that people can live in and how that sort of culminates as like a good point in your work. Like it's why writers write, is because people like to read them. And I guess the question is what elements of a world make it like so livable, so homely, and how does like elements of illustration or even drawing from culture like affect that?
I mean, when I am building, the first thing you want to do, are you a writer?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So here's the first thing, iteration, right? Not all of it is going to happen in the first draft any more than it's going to come out as a perfect piece of art the first time around, right? So you have to let yourself build in layers. Don't get overwhelmed. But also, all people are looking for when they think about world building, when we open a book, is we're looking for markers so we can orient ourselves. And whether that is, there's a sign that says wrap it up. I'm like, I feel attacked. But literally that's true whether you're reading a political thriller set in Washington, or you're reading a murder in a small town, or you're reading a picture book, or you're reading a science fiction or fantasy novel. You're looking for markers to orient yourself. Once the reader has a sense of power, a sense of place, how those things operate, you can do whatever you want, and you should.
Thank you.
My friends, on that note, unfortunately, we have to call it an end. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.